Bienvenidos todos y en particular a Eduardo Costa, un gran amigo y un artista internacionalmente reconocido como pionero del arte conceptual en América Latina y aparte de muchas otras travesuras de origen intelectual, emotivo.
No me gusta lo de en América Latina, en todo el mundo, ¿eh? Si ahora estoy en un lugar en Taiwán
Pues sí,
y, y
puedes
estoy
estar
en todo
en...
el mundo, en serio.
Sí, pues así es, ¿no? Hoy en día
En
se
el,
puede estar en todos lados a la vez.
claro,
Sí, buenísimo. Y
sí, estoy
entre
en el...
otras cosas que
eh,
Eduardo Costa introdujo, pero ya en los 60 cuando es un artista emergente en Buenos Aires y era parte del grupo de Oscar Mazota, una gente genial, y, y lanzó un manifiesto que el arte de los medios de comunicación con Jacobi. Cuéntanos un poco de eso.
bueno, en ese momento que quisimos hacer una obra sobre los medios de comunicación, donde la obra existiera en los medios, no en una exposición o qué sé yo. Eso podía venir después si uno quería, digamos, pero en principio era una obra que colaboraba con los medios para conseguir objetos visuales que consideramos parte de una obra de arte que produjo fotos y cosas por el estilo en los diarios y revistas donde se publicó.
Pues
Y
imagínate qué
para,
precursora era esa gestión cuando ahora estamos con todo lo de internet y las redes sociales, recuperando también imágenes y conectándonos con el quehacer artístico por todo el mundo, ¿no? O sea, era
claro,
realmente innovador lo que hicieron ustedes allí. Este, y bueno, podríamos pasar bueno, también puedo de alguna manera introducir a Eduardo dentro de la cuestión que esta exposición en American Society trata, y es el que en Nueva York era un imán en los años, estoy hablando en español, me estoy dando cuenta, y se supone que deberíamos hablar en inglés. So,
bueno,
excuse me, switch,
también.
let me switch to English for those that don't, that their bilingual capacity is not up to par like ours. But anyway, so we coincided in New York, and that was in the timeline of the show, 1965, 1975. And we were both part of El Museo Latinoamericano y MICLA that we published that Contra Bienal in activism that was directed at the dictatorship in Brazil at the time that was co-opting the Bienal de Sao Paulo. And it included in that contrabiennial book, it included something like 75 participations of either groups or individuals, and they were invited to either submit an image or text or both image and text. And that was, of course, again, without fax machines or without anything, we managed to do a hemispheric, and even those artists that were in exile in Europe were included in that book. And Eduardo was very much part of that early generation of avant-garde artists that came to New York and broke into the milieu, so to speak. And Eduardo in particular had a knack for immediately connecting with people like Vito Acconci, Scott Burton, John Perreault, who was a very important critic, and you collaborated with them. And it showed your willingness to immediately sort of incorporate everybody into not just the community, but into the art making process. And so the image that we're looking at right now is one can actually call it one of the first sound pieces in contemporary art.
Without sound.
Without sound, but still it is a poem for the deaf mute from 1969. It's a Super 8mm film, and it's digitized in color without sound. and it has an edition of 14. Do you still have some, or are they all gone?
No, there are some, because it was made into an edition of 14, following the advice of Stuart Comer, who was or still is, I hope, the curator of new media
At MOMA.
At the Museum of Modern Art in New York.
Yeah, right.
And I corresponded with Stuart before doing the edition. The work was much earlier, but it was shown at MoMA a few years ago. No, maybe like 10 years already. I don't really remember.
Yeah, we met there. We met each other there again. You
Yes,
you were already living back in Buenos Aires. You'd already left New York at that point. But you came back.
Not completely, I was always in touch, but I left it as the place where I wanted to live. I thought it was better for my for my health.
For your sanity.
Yes, to go somewhere more calm and not so full of promise. That kept everybody running and doing things all the time, and it kind of worked for me, worked out. But
it worked out. It worked out really well, because you've done a couple of really important shows since you returned there, and one of them was actually at the Museo Tamayo in Mexico.
Yeah, that was the best retrospective I had. It was a fantastic show, and the museum is great. I have to say that it was a fantastic experience, and they generated a catalog. ¿Lo puedes encontrar? Do you have the catalog?
Not here in my presence, but yeah, I have it. I never got to see the show. I saw you when you were exploring and getting things done in early 2017, when you made a trip especially to Mexico to plan the show. And then when it opened in September, I was already back in New York, so I never got to see the show, but everybody at the Tamayo remembers.
Yes, it was very, very, very special. This was the catalog, look.
Great.
And not because of the size, but really interesting. And the cover even was very creative. They had a fabulous designer for the catalogs. And she went through the work with such care and such love, and she produced a very, very great catalog, really. And there isn't a single mistake that I could find, and not a typo or anything.
My God, that's unusual.
It's unusual.
Very unusual.
I couldn't believe it, really. I had one retrospective before that in Buenos Aires, and there was an important catalog, but the catalog had so many mistakes that I was embarrassed to show it to anybody. And not because good things cannot be done there. They can. They certainly are many times, but this was a failure somehow. And
I guess it requires, somebody who is very meticulous. I mean, even when I look back at the publication,
I am like that. The thing is, they didn't let me see it until it was in print already, and they didn't let me see it because they didn't want me to find a mistake and to have to change something. It's incredible. It's incredible. Like, I still can't believe it. I was so desperate and frustrated with that. But let's talk about the good things.
Moving on to something more positive.
Let's talk about this catalog a little second, just to say that Manuela Moscoso was the curator, and she wrote the essay for the catalog together with Santiago Villanueva, who is from here, from Argentina, and they did a great job, And
they certainly did. So back to New York City, 65, 75, those years. The next slide. is that very iconic piece of yours that became an installation of the fashion fiction. Sophia, can we move on? There we go. And I actually also included that in the show that I co-curated from the 1960s through the 70s at the Bronx Museum called Magna New York. And you were in that show with this particular piece. That piece has been all over the world. And I think there was also a collaboration of it. There was some writer involved. Who was that again?
Who?
There was a writer involved, no? Who wrote a text?
A writer. I mean, many writers were involved after.
I think time. It was in Vogue, no? That the writer.
Yes, it was.
Very important contributor.
The credit line in Vogue quoted Lawrence Holloway. I mean, they called Lawrence Holloway to see what his opinion was about the work. And you know, Lawrence Holloway, a British critic who was in New York at the time, and he was very prominent.
Yeah, he was at the Guggenheim. He was at the Guggenheim. Very important.
He was everywhere. And his wife was Sylvia Slee, who he never wrote about because it was his wife, and he thought it would be not appropriate, you know.
Right.
He saw a conflict of interest there, which many people don't see now, but at the time was okay to see, you know, in a way. Well, talking
about... did you cast any other body pieces with the gold, or just the ear?
Yes, the whole thing. I mean, the fingers for the hands as rings, and toe rings, which were also a finger from the foot, you know, a toe, and hairs of gold.
Oh yeah, the hair. I remember the strings of hair, gold hair.
Yes.
So that was really outrageous. You know.
I took that to Vogue, and I was like 25, and didn't speak English so greatly, and all of a sudden they were all around me. You know,
I know.
Diana Vreeland, everybody.
I know, you became an instant success in the fashion, New York's Fashion Week, etc. Maybe then you should have followed that career, become a model yourself or something. I don't know. But it was really an interesting period that, you know.
No, I think I'm better. I think I'm better off in the art world, Carla, really. And you were one of the people who pushed me into that, so you should be proud of myself and of whatever happened later on.
Definitely.
And really, you were the first to write and to make a very, very good exhibition at the Museo del Barrio, I have to say, with Luis Cancel as the...
No, it was actually the, sorry to interrupt, it was the Bronx Museum.
What did I just say? I'm sorry.
El Museo del Barrio.
No, it was the Bronx Museum, of course.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Sorry.
I mean, the Museo del Barrio is doing good things, but
I know.
They did not do that show. So Fashion Fiction 1, how many fashion fictions were there?
17 over time.
Wow.
They all were in Vogue or Harper's Bazaar or that kind of magazine, which I wanted was mass circulation.
And can we move on to the next slide? Let's go from fashion fiction to poetry.
Yes. You'll see how versatile I was.
Yeah, totally. You were like all over the place. I remember that you restaged this when John was still alive. By the way, today I was like thinking about all our friends at that time, and like so many of them are no longer with us. You know, Vito is gone, Juan Downey is gone.
And the last one to go,
John Perreault.
One, but the most recent was Graham.
Yeah, right.
a few days ago. But
So
I've seen of him. Listen,
these
that's, yeah, go on,
these
please.
these poem these the title of this is the Tapeworms, and it's a collaboration between Eduardo and John Perreault, and stereophonic tape in a box. It's 4 tracks, and he still has some of those as well. I remember the last time you actually showed this, and you and John had an exchange was at that alternative space on Broadway.
It was the Emily Harvey Gallery.
That's
which
it,
was
Emily Harvey.
very important historical gallery. That's why we
Very.
wanted to do it there, because
I
they were the
wonder,
Fluxus.
yeah, I know
Fluxus
the whole
Gallery.
Fluxus thing. I wonder what happened to her archive because she moved to Venice, remember?
Yeah, well, her husband took over.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's still alive, really.
I have no idea. I lost touch with them.
But I
So,
know there was a change of leadership somehow, but in the family, let's say, and I think he's still in charge. He
yeah, I
must be.
don't.
They do interesting stuff. They are not so active, maybe, or not so publicly, digamos, obvious.
I think it's become more of a research center for younger curators and artists.
Uh-huh.
Because the archive is fabulous. For a while, that Asian American assistant of Holly Solomon was running it for her while she was gone. But I don't know what's happening there today. If we
No,
move
it's
on to the next slide, we're going into a completely different universe of work.
yes.
I mean, this is actually, you know, while the Tapeworms is very austere in visually speaking, this is actually a very sexy piece, Eduardo. And you can talk
Thank
for
you.
hours. You can talk for hours about this because I've been reading all the interviews about the volumetric paintings, or are they paintings? Are they sculptures?
You
And
know, I was recently invited to Berkeley to talk about, by Tom McInerney, which is one of the young, brilliant professors I have, to talk about the volumetric paintings to the English department, to the Spanish department, and the pandemic came, and I had to cancel because I didn't want to go in those circumstances. So we are waiting for the pandemic to pass to do that.
Right. Well, you have lots of time on your hands to prepare for it now. So you might want to explain to people that this is not a sculpture. This is actually a painting, and it's made of layers and layers and layers of actual paint pigment. It's sculpted with paint pigments, but it's considered by Eduardo to be a volumetric painting because it also
Yes.
harps back at the
title was
classical tradition of still lives and the fruit and all of that. No.
Yeah, and the idea of having a slice of the fruit in a painting in front of the whole fruit. That's why you see there this photograph, and the photograph is a photograph of an object which is about this size, about 40 centimeters by 25 or something, and it is a real squash with some of the seeds also represented in the inside, because that's one of the reasons why it is not a sculpture. In a sculpture, you cannot work the interior space because you have a block of marble, you work on the outside, then you can make a hole through it. But it's not the same as being able to represent, for instance, the inside of a fruit or of a person, because I did a portrait of Carter Radcliffe, who is the one who gave to this series the name of volumetric paintings, in a little, very good essay that he wrote about this very early, the first to write he was. And Carter, who lives now upstate New York, after the World Trade Center tragedy, we are still in touch, and I think I'm talking about him also because I owe him a Christmas card still, but I will send it now.
That's a good reason. That's a good reason. Memory helps you to catch up with whatever you have left undone. I didn't know you moved upstate. Actually, you know, that brings me to your friendship with so many critics and writers and editors, Elizabeth Baker and all of them.
Elizabeth Baker is so great, you know,
I
and
know.
she hasn't really been acknowledged in the greatness that she really gave to the city and to the new artists and to everything.
I know.
Because
She was super open. Like my
super,
magazine was in Mexico in the 70s as well.
yeah.
I always thought she was a great editor, and was very picky about, you know, who was going to write about what. And the list of contributors was superb. So Eduardo is, you know, one of these artists that is not only multidisciplinary, but he's also intellectual, and has produced a lot of things that we overlook. Instead, we look at your artwork. But that might be an interesting idea to consider, to do a little compendio of your writings, because your thoughts are very
Well,
clear.
there was one recently published in, ¿me lo puedes traer, por favor? El librito de Patrick Rini. Recently was published by Le Figue Press, which is a press, an independent press in Los Angeles. It was, I think now it has morphed into something else, but along the same lines somehow, done by the same people, this book.
I would love to have that.
I'll send you one.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So, and there was one point that you mentioned to someone in an interview, that you weren't just like multidisciplinary, you were interested in the areas of art that were totally undisciplined.
Yes, like what?
You mentioned, you know, the actions that you would take related to what your thoughts and emotions would be. But it seemed to me to be an interesting kind of thought when one looks at your work. It is very disciplined, but at the same time, it comes from an attitude towards life and art and love and everything else included, that doesn't necessarily follow the rules of the game. So maybe you meant that was undisciplined. So it's not like strict, you know, like it's going to be either a painting or a drawing or a sculpture.
Oh no, please. Everything can be anything, and you know, materials can be any material. That's why it was so unique to go back to painting, and with a vengeance. With a vengeance. You know, because I was really using so much paint, because all of those years where the intellectual brain was repressing the instinctual playfulness of dealing with paint, and all of that was compensated with the volumetric paintings. You know, even the portrait of Ligia Pape, which is soon, we can see.
Yeah. It's a beautiful portrait. But we have to go to the next slide, which is not the volumetric paintings, but that.
Okay.
This brings to mind when you were going to Duchamp's, where Duchamp's studio had been on 14th Street. I remember you used to come to my loft and tell me about those exploratory. You were sort of like trying to get some vibration or inspiration from the Duchamp. But then later on, there was a show in Buenos Aires dedicated to Duchamp. And you had done this Duchamp ready-made wheel that instead of spikes, it has a
spiral.
A spiral.
because he used at one point the combination of the motif, let's say a spiral, with the motif wheel, which was a circle with many prongs, right? And the wheel moves in a certain way, and it does represent history, you know, for many Oriental cultures, you know, that
Yeah.
believe that everything comes back to the same.
Yeah.
And in the case of Duchamp, you know, in the case of Marxism, history is supposed to move like a spiral, that is to be again in the same place, but somewhere else also, farther up or down, whatever, right? And Duchamp realized that these two shapes were very important because they are, you know, let's say, pregnant with philosophy, with a conception of history.
And believe. The sound left us? I can't hear the sound. Can you hear me? Sophia, the sound left me. I can't hear a thing. There you
Yeah,
are.
I
I
haven't
lost you
produced
for
massively yet.
I lost you for a couple
Or
seconds because
you'll
my
never lose.
sound went off, but here we are again. And then you also rode the bicycle. It's not on a pedestal, but it's an actual bicycle that you rode in Brazil when you were living there in Copacabana.
Yes, yes. I was living in Leblon, which is near Copacabana, and that photo that you know about or you saw is it was shot in Ipanema, and I
How
was
many years? How many years were you in Brazil?
5 years, 5 incredible years. Because what happened in Brazil to me is that I fell into the arms of a wonderful group of artists, Brazilian artists, which were Ligia Pape, of whom I made the only existing portrait. There are many photographs, of course, no, but the only art that represented her face. She was a very dear friend, and then I
Extraordinary
had
artist. An
what?
extraordinary artist, too.
And an extraordinary artist, and an extraordinary teacher too. And she had many disciples in Brazil, really. She was teaching art for a number of million years. And she was, you know, at the time when I did the portrait of her head, the head was very important for her. It was the most important part of herself. And I'm separating her and self intentionally, because that's how I think she felt that. She was, the brain and the head were very essential for her. And and then it was Elio Itisica and Ligia Clark. So
Yeah.
three fantastic people and fantastic artists.
And I
So
think
Elio,
you already met Elio in New York, no?
no, I met Elio in Rio. And then many years later, I met him in New York. And he wasn't doing well in New York. It was terrible for him, you know, really destructive. And he was doing drugs, whatever. And he was really, I remember I ran into him in the street once. And he told me, I haven't eaten anything for 10 days. And I feel so weak. And I was going to lunch at Scott Burton's place. And I told him, listen, come with me. And he said, oh, no, I don't know him. But he knows of you, and you know, you've heard of him. So come, let's let's see him have lunch with us. And we went to Scott's place and we had a great time. And he danced for us the steps of 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 samba dancing that is addictive, you know.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
started
yeah, yeah,
talking
yeah.
about drugs because he was having a problem with that, which he got over afterwards. But at the
Yeah.
time, he was devastated by that.
You
And
know,
well,
that portrait of Lydia is actually quite moving because it also could be considered sort of like almost like a death mask, like they used to do in, you know, in Roman times, a mask of the person that passed away.
yes, well, Pérez Oramas, Luis Pérez Oramas, who was a curator of Latin American art at MoMA, New York, wrote a very good article about that. You know, he says that it's like a mortuary mask in a way, and the reason that he says that is because Ligia was very sick at the time. I didn't know
Ah,
that. He had
ah,
been fighting leukemia for
oh my
7 years.
God.
And he went up the 4 stairs of the walk-in I lived in New York for me to take the mold of her face. And then, like 1 year later, I showed it in Buenos Aires, and she came to the opening from Rio.
Wow.
And she came with Esther Emilio Carlos, who was her best friend at that time. And they said it was worth coming when they saw it. It was worth the trip. And they stayed for a few days, and we had such great times together. I can't believe it. And I have some photographs wonderful of that time. Yes.
So, were you part of that time in Brazil? You were when you were collaborating and working together with Marta Chilindron, no?
Yes, that happened later on. That happened in the 80.
Or
It
in the
started
80s,
in
right?
89, I think, and it went on until 94.
Right, right,
And we
right.
did collaborate in a whole series of work that had to do with also with the media, because Marta had taken a photograph before meeting me of herself with a page of a magazine with somebody else's face on herself.
Yeah,
So I thought that
I
was
saw
very interesting.
somewhere. I saw
What?
somewhere the open mouth with the lipstick and all, like
Yeah, that was
serialized Warhol, like serialized, you know, like bands
yeah,
of them.
that was a talking painting,
Yeah,
and
a talking painting.
it wasn't a painting because there was no paint, but there were pages, laminated pages of magazines, and that was a shot. The initial shot is by Irving Penn, wonderful, and the painting talks, but talks like the discourse of a painting, not of a person that is talking from the painting, right? Although it is of course a person, but and says, my name is so and so, and it's about the identity of a painting, and there is one that is next to another painting that this painting likes, and then says, I'm so happy I had to share this space with you and not with someone else. You know, I mean, it was a great moment, and we had a lot of fun with Marta, really.
I mean,
Really had.
honestly, you kind of have this boyish, prankish streak, you know. But I
Uh-huh.
wanted to ask Sophia where the slide is of the torsos of two brothers. Here it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
This was
our old
this,
friend. We showed that at my space. Remember?
what your old friend.
No,
I know I showed it
there
at your
were
place.
I
No,
know
no,
the
it
work
was.
is an old friend of mine because it was shown at my place in a show.
Oh yes, of course,
Yeah,
of course.
with
No,
all
no,
these.
that was the first time it was shown,
Uh-huh. And it
and
was, I remember David Bourdon, a critic and writer, very important, that he came to the show and he said, I've always wanted to be and aim to be an insider. The kind of stuff you show demands that I be an outsider. And I was like baffled by his comment. He said, what is this? So So I said, no, it's actually,
David was great. David was really great, but David Bourdon really was the critic for Vogue magazine at one point, the art critic, and he was also for one of the major papers, and he was more into an official rather than avant-garde
yeah,
kind of art.
he was into Warhol, Oldenburg.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Warhol, of course, Warhol was very innovative, but Warhol was the previous
And he
generation.
also did Cristo, I think, book on Cristo. Very, very a good
Yeah.
friend of ours. And
Okay.
Eduardo, where is this painting now? 87.
It is in the collection of an Argentine very excellent collector, and he has a great collection, and it is in very good company, and it's been shown in several places lately.
Did you tell the collector that you actually cast your own penis?
No.
That's what you told me when you brought it. I said, whose
No, I
penis
didn't.
is this?
I
You said, it's
didn't. I
mine.
didn't. No, I didn't. I didn't. That's your imagination.
Aha, but you told me so,
Thank
but
you,
that was a
Marisol.
long
Thank
time ago.
you. Thank you for thinking about that.
And the others that were included in the show were Liliana Porter, Jaime Davidovich, that other artist who now lives in Miami and teaches, I can't remember his name, and Raquel Rabinovich. So it was a really good show.
Yes,
It
yes.
was
It was a great
I
show.
think it was in the early 90s, no?
I remember Ruby Rich was there and she loved it too. I
Yeah,
don't know why I remember
Ruby
her.
Rich was there too, right?
Yeah, because I must have, I said something to her like, I was afraid you don't like it because she was very much into the feminist, hard feminist line, of thinking, and I said, well, all this display, I said, it's just the torsos of two brothers, and she said, oh, I like it very much when it is that way, she said, and it was great because we understood each other what we were talking about,
Yeah, that place was. We did a lot of innovative things there, and
What?
I remember that we were also friends together with Ana Mendieta.
Yes, Anna, please,
Yeah.
please.
How
I
many
can't.
times did we
What?
get together with her too? And now the next slide is a black painting, which is very hard for me to see what exactly is going on there.
Well, this is a very interesting piece. It was the portrait of Licia Pape was acquired, was bought, was purchased by.
That must be
Sorry
New
about
York. Is that Buenos Aires or New York? The ambulance.
I'm sure the fire department engine or whatever that was comes from New York.
Yeah, it reminds me of my corner of Houston and Bowery. I had like
Yes,
400 a day.
Yes, it's made in the USA or in not, and I don't think it's New York exactly, but there are many of those in New York. And
so the black painting.
This painting
it's a volume, no?
is volumetric. That is,
yeah.
it has a thickness of paint only, and there is no canvas, right? And no stretcher or anything. It's only paint, and it's made with layers and layers. And I put inside the tablespoonfuls full of dry pigment in dust form, you know, like the dust with the color black. I put it inside, and then I just moved it around a little, and it created like a growth inside the paint, which is like the sprout a bit of a plant.
I see.
With many forms, without really great forms. I didn't care what the form would be, but I did care that the dry thing would be inside the wet and dry paint, right? With all the, when all the humidity is gone, the inside. And I had like a 1 hour talk with the woman who's, I can't remember the name right now, but she was great, in charge of the repairs of the paintings at the restaurateur or something. ¿Cómo se dice?
Conservation.
What?
The restoration.
Conservator?
Yes, and she wanted all the details about how the dry pigment was there, and blah, blah, because of course, you know, it's a conceptual painting, and the idea is what is important here, and it was also very handsome to look at.
And I think that it also connects with the black paintings of Ad Reinhardt, which are sort of like the combination.
Well, if you can believe, I rented an Airbnb loft not too long ago, about 5 years ago in New York, to stay there for a month, and it was Reinhardt, Ad Reinhardt's loft.
No kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. I remember I called Betsy Baker and I said, you know, I'm living in what was Ad Reinhardt's loft. And she said, oh, I can't believe it. Where is it? Blah, 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 blah. And my friend Richard Avedon, who was the lead singer of Liquid, that great garage band, probably the first one, I called him and he said, oh, you are living there. I can't believe it. I've been looking for that place for many years. I have to see it. I have to see it. Well, you know, with the urge is so great. I said, why don't you come over now? And he said, oh, yes, I will come. And he will, like 20 minutes later,
he appeared. Sound is gone again. Hello, Sophia. The sound. Hi. I can't hear Eduardo talk. No sonido, no hay sonido. Sophia. There it is. I lost you again. There was no sound for a while.
What happens? Are we still there?
Yeah, there was no sound. I couldn't hear what you were saying. So, you know, where was that loft of Ad Reinhardt, if I may ask?
The loft was on Broadway. I think it was one block beyond, going south, beyond
Canal.
8th Street. 8.
Huh.
It was on Broadway, so it was very like New York, you know, like
Yeah. Super downtown. And I remember translating his 12 golden rules, which referred to the black paintings, publishing it in Excelsior in Mexico in the 60s. And several people wrote the editor to say that I was making it up, that didn't.
What,
that I was
was he
that I
right?
was inventing. And I was like, the editor called me and he said, "Do you want to answer these letters here? I've got a couple from, one is actually from a Mexican critic." And I said, "No,
Mo-
I don't think I'm going to answer it. They'll find out that that's actually exists, and it's a text that very much is being quoted all around." And I thought it was just important for people to read it in Spanish in Mexico. That was all. So you certainly, with this piece of the black painting, responded to his golden rules, which we will not dwell on any further. But let's go to the next piece,
Okay.
which is
Oh, this one is a portrait of an assistant of mine who became a great friend. Renee Perry is her name. I don't know if I'm being recorded or not.
yes, you are. You are being recorded.
And you?
Yeah,
And you?
we're both being recorded.
Okay.
It says, "Portrait of a young woman who has just washed her face with lemon."
Juice. Lemon juice.
Lemon juice, sorry. 1999.
Yes, that's what it is. A volumetric portrait. The brain, her brain is inside, everything is inside. And if you were to open it, you would see that everything is there. And I'm telling you this because then I made some eggs, hard-boiled eggs made of volumetric paintings, and I cut one in half to show that the yolk was inside. And a woman bought it, and her marriage almost went down the drain because the husband insisted that the other eggs that were not open, but that was suggested that they were just like this one that was cut in half and had the yolk. The husband said, "I'm sure it's not in the other eggs inside." And she wanted me to go to her place to cut an egg in front of the husband to try to save the marriage.
No, and not only cut an egg in front of it, but to save the marriage by cutting the egg.
Yes.
Very symbolic, very symbolic.
Because they couldn't stop, they couldn't. Oh, here it is. Look, I'll show it to you. I'll show it, Carla. Carla, look.
I see.
You
Yeah.
see? And
Here
then,
it is.
and then the husband didn't think that this had this inside.
Oh my God.
Ay, qué genial que lo encontraste.
So here is the ubiquitous watermelon with seeds. Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Scrumptious, luscious.
You know, also Tamayo did many watermelons. So
you're not kidding. I'm like super empapada de Tamayo.
Bueno,
remember, I was a co-curator of a show at the Guggenheim, 78, 79.
And it was included some things by him, or it was about him, the whole show?
It was him, and then there were some objects that were referencing some of his traditional inspiration, like pre-Columbian objects and folk art, Mexican folk art. But yeah, there were a lot of the Mexican, Tamayo pink paintings. But there was one painting that we picked, actually two, that were his white watermelons. So he whited them out. Yeah, I remember that I took some of my New York friends, downtown loft-dwelling friends, to the opening. I invited them to the opening. And I remember Les Levine saying, "Well, he's not quite Robert Ryman." You know, that's sort of like very, how should I put it?
It was much earlier than Ryman.
Yeah, we're in New York, we are summa cum laude, and whatever else is done elsewhere in the world with the color white, or with whiting out the painting, is not going to compare with Robert Ryman. It was very intransigente.
Oh, I love his work. And I love especially the one that Lucy Parr has at her place, had at her place, a loft on...
Beautiful, beautiful.
Did you see that one? I mean,
Yeah.
it's extraordinary painting.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
So,
I think he had a great eye to pick that as from all of the pieces that he did, right? All of the paintings.
yeah. You know, Ed Leffingwell used to take me to their Thanksgiving. Did you ever join us? I can't remember.
I went to many parties at your place and they were all great.
This was a Thanksgiving at the Ryman's.
Are you still there? No, I don't know. Are you still on Houston Street and Broadway?
Right now, I'm in Cuernavaca, and it's extremely warm here. And the loft is still on. The loft is in Houston and Bowery.
Ah, I didn't know you were in Cuernavaca now. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Come on over.
Send them
Vente. Aquí tengo una alberca. Bueno, en fin, aquí hay la cámara de huéspedes, pero the next image, I love this.
You know, I have to go to New York also. I wanted to see the show, but I cannot because they gave me here the Sputnik vaccine. You know, I was vaccinated with that, and you know, I mean, I'm not allowed to. I'm not considered to be vaccinated.
Same happens to me. I'm kind of waiting. The word is that Moderna, which is accepted, they will actually manufacture it and give it privately to doctors. So maybe we can solve our problem soon.
Well,
be able to travel.
I got one Moderna, but I got two of the others. So I don't know what I had to call the embassy, right, or whatever, the consulate rather, about this. Oh,
but
this
let
is
me go back to the image here. The image, the color orange is kind of really unusual. Can you talk a little bit to that choice?
Yeah, well, it is a very interesting color, and you know, it has a mystical connotation in many of the spiritual Oriental countries.
Yeah, it's very Buddhist, and it's also because it's flowing. The image is flowing. It's also very sensual.
Yes,
it's like a Buddhist robe, you know, a piece of a Buddhist robe.
Yeah, it's
like it very much.
Yeah,
you know, it is now 5 minutes to 6 over there in New York. Maybe we should find out from Sofia if there are any comments or questions. Do we need to let the public, our viewers, have a say and ask us a question, ask Eduardo a question? What do you say, Sofia?
Hello. Thank you for this conversation. It's been amazing. Sorry about the little technical difficulties with the volume disappearing for Eduardo at some moments. Looking through the comments, we don't have yet any questions directly from the audience, but if you want to address maybe your time, specifically in New York in the mid 60s and 80s, we only have 2 minutes.
Well, I would rather listen, Sofia, sorry for interrupting.
No,
since we already talked about that, I'd rather ask Eduardo the impertinent question of what the future holds for him.
Perfect. Take the floor.
What a question.
I know. It's a tricky one.
I have 2 great projects for the next 10 years. So things that I have accomplished. One is a museum, but an extraordinary, completely different museum, art museum. And another one is a garden. a completely different garden which changes the history of the garden, yeah, the universal history of the garden. And I want to do these two things, and that is it. I don't want to make 10,000 works, you know, like Kusama, Kusama wants to do. I don't want to have a lot of work. I have to have the things that I have to do, and I know nobody else is gonna do for some time, right?